big machines in automotive. So, that's potential injury to people that, if you shut it down wrong, you could cause the whole line to go down, which could be millions of dollars a day. So that's risk to the company's bottom line. That's risk to personal injury. Those are the kind of things that we start to think about. Maybe this should be virtual reality.
Yeah. And so going back to the visual, Cody's our producer on the webinar today. So if you hear us talk to Cody, he's over there controlling this. The one of the best uses here that I wanted to call out is this emotional category, right? We talk about the Jaden Daniels example that may have an emotional component. The gowning one, maybe less of an emotional component. Talk to us a little bit about the emotional side potential in virtual reality.
Well, we've seen, some articles that have said, that there's really not that big of a difference between adding an emotional component to VR or not having an emotional component to VR. I would argue that virtual reality, the Jaden Daniels example, had an emotional component. I don't know how you're not emotional when you've got a big, huge guy about ready to crush you.
Yeah.
I would say that if you were teaching firefighting technique, and you added an emotional component of all of a sudden you're hearing somebody in the other room screaming for your help, that adds an emotional component. But I'm an old film guy, and story is really important to me. We'll talk more about that later on, but I often think that there's no reason you can't add a story or an emotional component to something and make it better.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I know one VR simulation that we created was around an active shooter situation. And there's that the kind of the firefighter type
Yeah.
of example there. Um, the what Jeff was referencing with the articles and the conversation around emotion not making a big difference is rooted in an article that was produced in a research study that looked at two different groups in a safety training. And in this training, one of the groups was they went through the safety training and then they had an emotional storytelling component at the end of it, and then the other group did not. And the outcomes were virtually the same between the two groups. So in that case, the findings were emotion didn't need to be used in that particular use case. So just wanted to mention that. It was a study that came out. And so that's that conversation of, do we need emotion? Do we not need it? When do we use it? All of that.
And these are the conversations that you and I are always having when we're
Right.
trying to, determine what is the best way to solve a business's challenge through learning.
So let's talk us about some of the rethinks. What are the flags for you that you see as like, all right, we need to rethink this. Like, let's pause, like slow down a little.
Yeah, mine is my first one that I think about is how are we gonna handle the headsets? Where are your
Yep.
learners? How many learners do you have for this particular experience? Are they all across the country or across the world? Because getting headsets to people is hard and it's expensive, and there are ways to do it. There's some great programs now, some great companies that are kind of managing headsets and so forth. But one of the ways that we've sort of wrangled that a little bit is, okay, you've got 500 employees around the country, but you're all coming together for a conference in San Diego
Yep.
next year.
I'd love to go to a conference in San Diego with
Yeah,
you, Jeff.
I hope you guys invite us. Anyway, if you can get everybody to a centralized location,
Yeah.
now all of a sudden the dissemination of those headsets becomes a moot point, and you can run people through that at given times, and you've
Yeah.
just simplified the process.
We did that with a sales training. It was at a conference. They only needed 4 headsets, so made a sales training on like handling objections and all of that. So there are ways around that, but it was definitely like a rethink. Is this the right way to do this? The one for me that jumps out is the accessibility limitations. That's where you already talked about this a little bit. The multi-sensory component to virtual reality. The auditory components, the visual components, the tactile, all of those components that a lot of times virtual reality becomes very limiting when it comes to accessibility. And there's a huge drive and huge push in a lot of organizations to have fully accessible content. So that's just another thing that's in the list as we are looking at exploring these modalities. What's the right solution? So we're going to jump to our graph. And as we've been talking, we want you to drop in the chat where you'd see these examples. We're going to start with the Jaden Daniels, and what you'll find is Jeff and I are really bad weathermen. We're going to try to map these here, but Jeff, the Jaden Daniels example, you put this up in quadrant 2,
Right up here.
right over there. There you go. You're on it. You're on it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Why'd you put it there?
Well, I think that this really checks all the boxes. Your learner is in a focused area, right? So you've got probably 3 quarterbacks on the Washington team that are going through this.
Yeah.
It's easy to get them in and out of headsets, so that checks that concern away. Really high ROI, really immersive, where you want to put somebody into a safe place to
Yep.
practice. You don't want them to have to get smushed by a lineman every time, so that
Yeah.
the safe environment for practice, which is a really critical VR attribute. And so, yeah, I think it's a perfect, and I really wish I would have produced this one.
It would have been pretty awesome. I also put mine right up there. Pretty much the same reasons. You'll see here it shows in quadrant 2, high complexity, high immersive. You'll see highly measurable. There's
You
there are
have to
very
point to it.
there are very few things that are more measurable than winning an NFL playoff game.
Yeah, that's
So that one stings still. Jeff, the gowning one, your head is right on it. You put the gowning scenario right here in this quadrant 2 as well.
Yeah, I think it was a very successful. I know it was successful, and I think because of the really high ROI, where you're talking hundreds of thousands to into the millions of dollars of potential return on investment, and for the really the precision that we needed to accomplish in the training,
Yeah.
I think that's why I think it was worth the complexity, and I think it had a really high impact.
Yeah, mine is right again, right where your head is at. It's here in the quadrant 2, but it's maybe a little lower in the immersive and the engaging, and a little lower in the complexity. I think it's a little lower in the immersion for me because might not have that full like emotional component. It might not have. It's very like tactile, kinetic, or haptic, right? It's got that haptic component to it. But I would put mine just a little bit, but still in quadrant 2 for the reasons of ROI. Again, would love to hear anybody in the chat. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? This is, again, the fun of this conversation where Jeff and I, we may agree, may disagree on some of these. So, Jeff, that was our first approach modality to immersive learning virtual reality. I want to jump to, this is probably your favorite, the narrative and the interactive video. So I'm going to jump to an example. I want you to kind of talk to us about narrative and interactive video, though, through this example.
Yeah, so being, an old film and video guy, this modality is kind of where I thrive, where I've always lived. I think a good story is always important in training. I think if you are not building storylines, which means characters and scenarios, and you can see this is what we do here is we call this flipping the script. We've actually made the training, the video in the training, the canvas, and all of the learning is built on top of it. So if we need to add, go after graphics and see graphics, we do that. If we see any of the interactivity, that's all built on top of the video. So again, the video is the canvas. And we really think that the stories that we build that way can really be powerful. In this example, if we go back to that, Cody, this is sales training and it's observing your environment. So the host here is saying, well, if you're trying to sell something to somebody, you really need to observe their environment. And then we do this effect and we actually bring the learner into the environment that our host is in. And he's saying, well, look around. Look at my stuff. See what you think I'm into. And then you'll better know what product to sell me. So now that we've kind of broken the fourth wall and we are inside of the environment with him, this can be really powerful. It can be really powerful to have the learner be an active character in the story. So what happens then is now we're able to interact. He says, I'm going to go into the other room and next to the products, and you can see, what you think I would be interested in. And the learner gets to explore his environment a little bit, and then eventually we jump to this product wall that has all of these products that we can try to present to him. So this is a great way to to really kind of engage, right? Because now I'm not just quote observing,
You're not
right?
passive.
I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
passively observing. I'm in it with them, and
Right.
I'm trying to have this relationship and this dialogue, and there's pressure, there's stakes, and I'm like, oh man. So then if I go back and I go to the product wall, Cody, now I'm seeing. I pick a product and I present it to him. He says, "Oh yeah, that is, because I need some sunscreen because I'm into volleyball. Great job." And then we even gamify it a little bit. So ding ding, you get a point for that. And then we get to choose another product, and we keep presenting back and forth. So it's this really immersive, interactive, and engaging type of training that you can get with video, with interactive video, and not necessarily need VR,
Yeah.
because this was disseminated all over the world. So there was a limitation there. So how
Yeah.
do we do it? We did it with interactive video in this case.
So I want to go to then, I want to talk about our best uses, right? Again, you're touching on a lot of these already, but the best uses for narrative and interactive video. I mean, I love, like, this is for me like one of the most immersive, like when we're talking about story arcs and how do you create a compelling narrative. One of the traps that I often see from learning teams is, they say, yes, I use storytelling. But often what that can mean is I present knowledge, I present knowledge, I present knowledge, and then I present a scenario. And we're really talking about a different thing here than that formula. So talk to us a little bit more about some of those best uses when that storytelling component, that interactive video might really shine.
Yeah, we've done some really fun projects with cybersecurity. One time we took a bunch of actors and we actually, the story that we created was that we were infiltrating a hacking organization. And once we were inside that hacking organization, we got the experts within the hacking organization to tell us their tips and tricks, their secrets as to how they would do a phishing scam or a vishing scam or an email scam, and we would actually get to kind of shadow them and be able to watch them. But the whole thing was, it was like you were watching an episode of a TV show, and it's so much more engaging. And the responses that we got from the learners who took that were like, why can't everything be like this?
Yeah, yeah,
Why is it so hard? And what I would really press people to do is it's not that difficult to make something really good, to go from
yeah,
good to great, to go from okay to really entertaining. And the more you're entertained, whether or not that doesn't need to be funny, but just entertain and engage, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to remember.
yeah. So there have been a couple of questions that have come through that I think relate to some of this. We're going to touch on them in just a second. But I want to look at the rethink category a little bit here too, because narrative, interactive video may not always apply either. So talk to us about some of the ones that are on the screen here.
Well, you don't ever want to do something just to do something, right? And that's kind of a motto that we always have. We don't want to we're not just doing shtick, right? We
Yeah.
want we want it to have a business result. We want it to have a learning result. We want there to be a reason behind what we do. So, no true reason for interactive branching that would, be one. Uh, Often, if all of your content is baked into the video, it can be difficult to do updates. There are tricks that we use to get around that, like layering graphics, so that if a
Yeah.
graphic changes, we can just change that one layer, or building something, a slightly different way, so that we know that if we need to update that component, that we can do it. But those are some of the ones that you might want to rethink. You might want to pause and double check your thinking.
Yeah. To me, the one that jumps out, is the content updates that you're talking about. The tighter timelines, depending on what you want to film, if you're doing an interactive video, that could be potentially a challenge. But so one of the questions that I wanted to bring up was, or first, I think it's from a apologies if I misprint. Kalima asked a question about the emotional impact, right? And understanding learners and what's going to be emotional for you might just be a different thing for me altogether, right? And I think that is a really, really great question because it touches on that learning science component really strongly. Because what it's the heart of that, and the core of this is you always have to lead with your learner. Who is your learner? How do they best learn? And we know that not every learning experience is going to check every box for every learner. But you can't, we always want to really emphasize, don't lead with the technology, don't lead with virtual reality, don't lead with interactive video, lead with understanding the challenge, understand the outcome, and in that, who's your learner? And so that's a really, really important part of this. So I really appreciate that question coming through. And then Anthony asked, about the programs that are used in some of these from a video perspective, right? Like the one that we just showed that you walked through. That's a video production crew that uses a ton of tools and programs. It's a production team for video production. It has Adobe After Effects components. But then I think some of the cool thing, and then we're going to get into this conversation later, is how do you take those experiences and integrate them into some of the more traditional authoring tools like Storyline. So the example that Jeff you walked through with the video, that's all filmed with the production crew and used in Adobe, but that is brought into Storyline so it can be interactive, so it can provide that reporting into the LMS.
Yeah, and you can do that. Even that, like I was talking about, like flipping the canvas and making the video full frame. You can do all of that inside Storyline. You create all the branching scenarios, all the interactivity, and then it's just your imagination. Like, have some fun. Come up with a story, a real story. Yeah, like for example, like we did there. We said, well, what if you pull them into his own environment? What if we just do a little effect to make it feel like you just went through a portal or something, so you can, right? And that just takes a little bit of creativity, a little bit of extra thought.
Yeah, and from the question about what tools do we use to create virtual reality, there are a lot of tools. So it really depends on the specific case that may drive us to a specific tool. We'll show some of those types of examples of where this could apply differently based on some different modalities. But just like in the video case, it could be a whole range of tools and programs that are used.
Yeah, Unity used to be the gold standard, and it still sort of is, but there are a lot of more user-friendly, low-code solutions that can get you a pretty good solution for a lot less technical aptitude and a lot less money.
And one of the last question that we're going to have right here that that came through from Ellie, the advantages and disadvantages of live action versus animation. I love this question too, because this is one that we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, we get this a lot. I'm a big fan of animation, especially if you do. I'm not talking about the out-of-the-box animation stuff, but you're actually really creating animation. We just finished a really cool animated series for one of our customers. I would argue that to create a real, true emotional response, having really good actors is the way to go. It's really hard to create a really good emotional response with animation, especially with the budgets that we're dealing with learning, right? We don't have $1 million per episode to create, some
TV show.
Yeah. So what we've got, I think that we can really, it's a lot easier to cast some really powerful actors that are bringing to life a really good story. Because I think typically I'll engage with that a little bit better. Plus, then I can see myself as a character in the story if I write it to include the learner.
Yeah, and I think it matters, again, who your learner is, right? And we've done animations that are for manufacturing, but also for children, right? So like we want to understand the learner profile. What are we trying to communicate through this? Is it the facial expressions that's really hard or complex to capture in animation? So it can really go both ways based on different situations.
Yeah, exactly. Great question, though.
Great question.
One of the ones we argue, politely argue about the most.
Yeah, totally. And a quick answer to Braden, your question, the narrative branching software that is Storyline is part of the Articulate 360 suite that you can find if you Google that. They have that available. What I want to do is map the examples on here. So Jeff, the video scenario that you walked us through, you put this here in Q2, and let me remind everybody that's on the webinar. We'd love to know where you put this.
Yeah, so I put this here because I do think it's pretty engaging. It's not that complex of a solution.
Yeah.
That's kind of why I put it there.
I put mine a little less complex, and I think a little more immersive than what you had yours at. I love the storytelling component here. I love putting myself into that situation, feeling fully immersed in that. But I think it's maybe a little less complex, right? Like I think that there's not as much complexity here as something like a highly complex virtual reality test.
That's because you didn't have to produce it.
That's always just one. You just had to think of the creativity, and I didn't have to produce it. Yeah. I want to talk about, all right, I'm going to move here. This is a traditional, this is the one we showed, but take a traditional computer-based training that uses storytelling. You put yours right here. Why did you put yours there?
Well, I think anytime you can add story, like I would say a normal computer-based training that was just presenting information, I would have it lower in the immersion. But anytime you can add a story to it, I mean, just think of the books you read, or the movies you watch, the TV shows. A story means a lot, right? And I think that starts to raise the engagement, the immersion level a little bit.
Yeah, I'm totally covering mine up. But you can see I'm pretty. I told you at the beginning, we're bad weathermen. I put mine here in quadrant 3 as well. I think it's probably lower in immersion, but low complexity. I think you said it really well at the beginning, Jeff. It's not that hard to do something really great. And so the storytelling, how do you capture that attention? How do you capture that? I think is a really great example of how. I think storytelling can be a really great example of that, but it's not that hard. Jeff, I want to quickly ask you, when it comes to immersive storytelling, what is your current guilty pleasure book, TV show that you just get sucked into because it's so good?
Well,
and we'd love to hear in the chat, what's yours?
Slight deviation to the question, because I just read this or watched this amazing interview with Quentin Tarantino talking about how Bruce Willis was cast for Pulp Fiction. And it was such a cool story, and it just reminded me how much I love Tarantino's movies, mostly because of the writing. I know they can be a little graphic sometimes, but I always think the dialogue is just so well done.
Yeah.
That's probably my newest one.
I see Outlander in the chat. The intro music for Outlander is so catchy. Mine right now, I said this to you a couple weeks ago, but my wife got me on the Throne of Glass bandwagon. So I'm cruising every night through Throne of Glass series. And then there's a new Building the Band show on Netflix that is just trash reality TV that sucks me in. But it's totally sucked me in, and it's the immersive storytelling. And it's compelling, and it's fun. So Jeff, I want to jump to virtual tours, our next approach modality here. I'm going to show this example, and I want you to talk us through what we're seeing on screen.
Yeah, so this is for a customer of ours. They had a showroom that was widely visited by their employees around the world. And so we built this during COVID, but we've really seen it kind of blossom. You can see you saw a hologram of one of the founders there. And then we can put video inside. We can do animations like you're seeing right here. And you can really bring a space to life. Like check out this waterfall. Like we can really kind of, we call these Disney-esque moments, right? Where we can really kind of take something and take it to the next level. Again, just by thinking a little bit more and
Yeah.
trying a little bit harder. So there's always these opportunities to surprise and delight. And, in this example, it really did help them with all the people who wanted to come visit this space but couldn't. And since we've done this now with lots of different companies, for their corporate headquarters, it can be good for recruiting and onboarding, and we can really build a lot of learning into experiences like this.
Yeah, and one of the things that you can see here is how it can be deployed in like web format, but finding ways to, coming back again to those more traditional tools that teams already have, like a storyline, finding a way to take that, build it into storyline, finding ways to ask questions and get that recording for learners as they're going through.
Yeah, so this is a web experience that just lives, it's open to anyone. But you could take that, and if you wanted to, again, break it up like you were saying, and ask questions to see if they were truly learning what you wanted them to learn inside of the environment. Now you can get your tracking, your recording, and all of that. So yeah, just bringing these elements into a storyline environment.
Yeah. I want to walk through another example here. This is a special one for us. This is a little bit different version of a virtual tour. But Jeff, talk to us about what we're seeing on screen now.
So this is the way that we do the previous one was we go in and we scan the environment, and we use the 360 images and the point cloud data to build that solution. This example uses augmented reality, and we also use the point cloud data to create enhancements to an environment. This is our customer Special Olympics Michigan. And the experience that we created allows them to use phones or tablets, you can see me walking through, and deliver augmented graphics and wayfinding. As you saw just a second ago, there was, you saw Spanish come up, even though Spanish didn't exist. Here's some wayfinding that doesn't exist typically, and you can see the little dots. That's taking this little boy on a path that avoids stairs. So now he knows how to navigate to the area that he wants to go, but avoids any kind of issues.
I love the bringing learning to where people already are with the devices they already have. I think that's a really great way to engage people. I think about museums, different types of. I know there was like an aquatic center that they wanted kids to come through, and when they were kind of walking around the track, to be able to hold up an iPad next to the wall and follow fish that are showing them the speed that they're all these different cool things, bringing learning in fun ways, and then obviously in that example is the accessibility component that's really important as well.
And why doesn't every public building have something like this, right?
It could be great. It could be really
cool. Help me navigate. I have challenges, whether it's language, physical, whatever. Help me navigate this space.
Yeah. So let's go to the best uses and rethink for virtual tours. Jeff, I know you've already talked about a number of these, but walk us through some of the ones that jump out to you.
Yeah, I think in the first example, a difficult or impossible place to access. We have a customer who's a grocery customer who's going into states that they don't have any of their stores. Well, why not create an environment like this so that for recruiting, now I can actually jump on and experience it. The second, the Special Olympics example, was really a good use case for how to kind of bring a space to life and add value.
Yeah, the dispersed audience is a really important one that jumps out for me because of we talked about the challenges potentially with virtual reality, right? With all the people that may be across the country, across the world, this being able to be delivered in a web-based experience or through something like a storyline that can live in a learning management system. Just some really cool applications.
Technically, that first example that we showed can be delivered in virtual reality as well, using the exact same assets.
Yep.
So we created a web version, there's also virtual reality.
And if you're on site, you can hold your phone up, and those things have that object targeting for that.
So it's multi-sensory.
Yeah, really cool. For rethink, Jeff, you're covering it a little bit, so you might want to scoot to the. Yeah, here we go. Talk to us about some of your rethinks here.
I think that want to make sure that we have a clear outcome. I think that's the big one, right? We don't, what is the point of doing this? So we talked about that a little bit before. We don't just create things to create things. So I think always having a good learning objective and a good business objective to tie that to are key points.
Yeah. The one here for me is limited access to assets and environments. This can be, unless you have the ability to scan an environment, there are a lot of, and we're going to talk about this in the next modality, but a lot of really cool repositories for spaces. We're talking about a vehicle center that we're working on right now that has, it's not, the physical brick and mortar is not created yet. So you can go on and you can find assets that already exist that facilitate these types of experiences. But it's a much different story to go and purchase an asset. It's a much lower cost than going and creating something like this.
Right, and we will get into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
You're teasing, right?
I'm dangling a carrot.
That's a story component that Kate's access.
Yeah.
Utilizing right now.
But that to me is limited access to assets can be a challenge there. So let's go to here. Let's map this. And on the chat again, we'd love to hear where you map it. Jeff, you put your virtual tours here in quadrant 2 again. Yep.
Yeah.
Why there?
Well, I think it's. I think the complexity is medium. I think the immersion is way higher. I think the need for it was great, and the investment was appropriate.
Yeah, I put mine over here in the much more immersive, lower complexity. Jeff's going to say, because you didn't have to build this. But I'm thinking about, can we find these assets that are already created? Can we create these environments? And that is possible in a lot of these situations. And a lot of these programs, these softwares, these tools, make the build low-code, no-code types of building that teams can go and acquire those skills and softwares in a much more accessible way than what they could 3 years ago.
Yeah. Often what we do in our company is we'll teach our customers how to do it. Kind of like we'll build one together and you guys
give teams the keys to cards to do that. All right, let's talk about our last one here. This is augmented reality. Jeff, this one's fun. I'm going to jump to the next slide because if you're on the webinar right now, love for you to pull out your phone, scan the QR code, and point your camera then at the ground, and this car chassis will drop in your office, in your living room, wherever you're at. It's really fun.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the examples that, Kate, when you were saying, do assets exist? I can't think of any product training that wouldn't be better by adding some augmented reality to it. On training, we're in the furniture, the office furniture capital of the world. So we're sitting in chairs, and we've got a desk here. And if I was trying to sell this, create sales training for these products, why wouldn't I want to drop this chair right here, be able to spin it around, be able to interact with it, be able to really feel what it was like? I mean, and you can do that so easily. And the point that you were trying to make is that asset more than likely exists. If my company is building this chair, I have the 3D model, I have the CAD file. I can take that CAD file, drop it into my training as easily as we just did here with this chassis.
I think that's such an important part of this conversation. If you drop this car chassis into your space, this is an example. This is not an asset that we created. We didn't have to create this. We were able to get this off of. There are repositories like CG Trader, Turbo Squid, Sketchfab. Those are just a couple that I'm throwing out there that are websites where you can find some of these assets that might work for pretty inexpensive. So I love this as an example. I want to jump to the best uses and the rethink for AR. AR can mean a lot of things, right? The Special Olympics Tour is kind of AR in a lot of ways, but what we're talking about here is maybe more that car chassis.
Yeah, we do AR in manufacturing, step-by-step, how to run a line, how to fix something, often using HoloLens or personal devices. We're not really talking about that here. We can talk about that as much as you guys want offline. We're talking about how to embed a 3D object into training, into an e-learning, in a really simple way to add a lot of value.
Yeah.
So Cody, if you go back to that graphic, thanks. So yeah, I really think anything that's step by step is a great augmented reality tool or use case. On the job training, kind of that cheat sheet, that can often be a really good one. And then the contextual training, kind of like what we're talking about with that chassis.
So I'm going to go back to the QR code, give anybody a chance to scan this again. What I wanted to your point right now, the just in time. So if you scan this and you drop this in your space, what there is a code on a brake pad. And so when we're showing this example, what we do is we ask somebody, find the code, that's on this brake pad. And this changes, whether or not Jeff and I need to be in the same space for Jeff to validate me knowing where that brake pad is. Versus, right? So it doesn't have to be a person. We can give this QR code. I showed this to somebody when we first created this or dropped this in MindSpring, and internally we were taking a look. I took a picture of Jeff and our president. They were on the ground trying to find it, and it changed their physical interaction with the object. And I just think that's such a great use for when you use something like this.
Yeah.
The rethink category, though, it can be really cool. For me, is this novel or does it add value? It can add a lot of value in a lot of situations, but there are some cases where we've had conversations with customers where they say, I really want this, and we want to maybe go, again, is that the best for your learner? Are they going to have challenges with how to use this? Is this just cool? And sometimes it's okay. Is it just cool, or does it actually add value? So,
and then do I own the asset already? Does my company own that asset? Yeah, do I have to build that from scratch? Because building a 3D model from scratch can be expensive. And especially if it has multiple components. I was going to try to build this chair.
Think of how many little bolts or screws or pieces there might be in this. So Jeff, on the grid here is augmented, where you put augmented reality if we're building the asset.
You have to build the asset yourself. Whoops, way over here. Yeah.
And I put mine pretty much in the same spot. This to me, if you're going to build an asset, it may be in the rethink category for me. It might be even a little lower on the
own the asset.
But if you own it, right? That's where we're covering it up over here. I'm covering it up. Yeah. Jeff, you have yours. It's low complexity then, and it's there, and mine is right next to that. And that's an important part of this because you can again find these if you have them. Talk to your teams internally in your organizations. Ask if they have these CAD files or whatever it might be. Seamlessly integrate these into learning experiences in a really effective way. Yep. So, I know we're coming up to the end of this. We want to talk about where to start, where to go with learning experience or with immersive experiences. So the first step that we see is take those experiences that you're talking about, that you're thinking through, and map those to the quadrant that we've been talking about today. Start the conversation. Right? Jeff, anything you want to add there?
No, I think that'll really help you. Think about what especially the rethink categories. I think if you're thinking the rethink and you start to have too many rethinks, well then rethink.
Yeah. Secondly, what do you have access to? That's piggybacking on the conversation we were just talking about. I think one of the things on here, the 360 images, is a great way to start. I mean, if you're wanting to explore would our learners even like this type of thing, before you go and do a really complex scan of a space, maybe you take and just use a 360 camera, start to include that, incorporate that into some of your storyline experiences, as an example. Number three, start simple.
Yep. Like you said, just do a little example, do a pilot, test it, see if you like it, see if you have the talent internally to pull it off, and then get some feedback and iterate.
Yeah, and I think the metrics here is really important. Really wanting to, at the beginning when we talk about, who is MindSpring, we can do all these cool learning things, but we always want them to drive to business outcomes. Start to think of the metrics, right? Determine what those metrics are. What do you want to accomplish? What's going to matter for the business and for your learner? And then finally expand. So this is a line here, but this is actually more like a circle, right? that expand, take what you did, and that's number three, expand that, modify it, test it, and then that becomes the new baseline. This is where there was a question that came in the chat earlier. I forget who exactly it was, but they asked, they're a teacher in education, which quadrant would they start in? And I would say it matters on what you're trying to accomplish, but start simple. Right? Start with that simple experience. Start to explore some of these low-code, no-code tools if you want virtual reality. But then, once you start simple, you build that experience, that becomes your new baseline when you come back to number one.
Right.
Okay.
So, we want to have some time for Q&A. I know we've had some questions come through the chat. We've answered a lot of them that have come through. Sandra, that I see here with introducing virtual reality in the EdTech course for high school teachers. To expand on that question a little bit more, when we're thinking about virtual reality, Jeff, the outcome, right? Are you looking for these educators, these high school teachers to know something? Are you asking them to learn change their behavior? Is this performance-based? That might certainly change. Virtual reality might not be the right modality to deploy that in some of those cases.
Yeah. Where are they? Are they all in one school, or are they in multiple schools? Who's going to be in charge of the technology and teaching them how to use it?
Right.
So there's a lot of small barriers to entry sometimes that you need to really make sure that you're thinking of.
And there wasn't a question, but it was a comment that had come in from Anthony. The virtual tours, they can range from low complexity to high complexity based on the tools. And that is 100% accurate. You can have super complex stuff, you can have low complex stuff. And so that's, again, we keep coming back to this, but that grid is a framework for thinking through, is this low complexity, high immersive, is there a clear ROI? All right, great. Like, let's really lean into that and maybe use that.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question. Can VR be useful in IT company setup as well? Could you give some examples or use cases, or if you've worked in that environment? So it's hard, maybe a little difficult to answer that from a broad perspective of IT in general. But I know that there's the one that you were alluding to earlier, the manufacturing with, I know it's got a very technical IT type of setup that virtual reality has been used for.
Sure.
With
I would need to. I have so many questions, for Ashok on that. Maybe we can take that one offline because for an IT company that's doing what, that's trying to teach what, trying to teach that to who, trying to change that what behavior. I think just there's a lot that could happen. Is it soft skills? Is it technical? Is it So I'd be happy to follow up with you on that one to learn more.
Yeah, because can it be useful? I think absolutely. The answer is probably yes. But maybe not in all situations for IT, right? There might be those use cases that it has that. It lives in that quadrant too. Other use cases might be pretty squarely in that rethink category. So we have a question from Kalima. Can we show the immersive experiences slide up? Is there a specific slide in here that you'd like to see? We will also be sending out this presentation as well for everybody so that you can have access to it. Let me see. We have some more coming in. If talking education, one thing I can think of is how to handle difficult students using it as a practical exercise, especially for new teachers having high function spectrum students. So that is a really great.
Can I take this one?
I would, Jeff. Nothing would make me happier than you take.
We had a customer that was wanting to share with parents what a child with cancer was going through from the life cycle of the moment that they entered the hospital. Very emotional program to make, right? And we did it with 360 video because we wanted that emotion. Animation wasn't going to work, but we wanted to really document every stage that the child was going through and let the parents then go into VR and experience that so that they could see what their child was going through and be able
Yeah.
to support them. And it was a great use case for that type of experience.
Yeah, and that's
kind of similar to for what I'm understanding.
Yeah, that side of the coin is really understanding what the experience of somebody else might be to build that empathy and do that. And I think, and this is maybe from a teacher side, how can a teacher interact and learn how to engage with a difficult student?
Practicing the safe environment.
Yep, but I also think of the application as well of sometimes these types of experiences, in some cases they can be overstimulating, but in other cases with students, those can bring them into some of these environments that feel safer, that feel calm.
But we've also done it where we flip the script, right? So now I'm a teacher learning how to best engage with that student. What's the student's perspective?
Right, exactly.
Like, what are they seeing? Are they seeing somebody attacking them, or are they seeing somebody who doesn't understand them? And being able to try to show that other side would be really powerful as well.
So we'd love to, if anybody has any more questions, to continue the conversation with any of you, reach out to our team. We'd love to continue. This is what Jeff and I love to do all day. So we want to talk really briefly about next steps. So if you have a challenge and want to understand the best approach for your scenario, you want to talk to us and see where we might map something in this framework with you, reach out. We'd love to have a conversation. And then if you saw something that you really liked, maybe as a virtual tour, maybe as virtual reality, live action video, whatever that might be, and you want to learn more, reach out to us as well. This is what we do, and we do it really, really well. We'd love to continue any conversations with you and your team. And finally, we'd love feedback on today. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to, did you like this format, the video format like this? Did you like the presentation? Did you find it helpful? Did you find it useful? We love the feedback. Where can we improve and what did you like? So thank you so much for your time, and we know time is very valuable, so we really appreciate that. And again, to Karen and the team over at eLearning Industries, we really thank you for helping put this together. Thanks so much, and we'll hopefully talk to you all soon.